Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today we're going to keep the subject matter light. We're going to discuss Adolf Hitler. No, but I'm completely being serious. Literally Hitler is on the agenda because why can't we discuss him ever? We should. Plus, a Newsweek writer apparently has a death wish because he's written a piece entitled, "Taylor Swift is not a good role model. And if you want to die, that's exactly how you do it. The Swifties are going to come for you." Plus, people are apparently upset with Kyle Rittenhouse. Do you guys remember him from the Kenosha, the BLM, the shooting? He got off. It was amazing. Well, people are upset with him because apparently his mother and his sister have no money, and they started a GoFundMe, and the internet is saying that that is not right because how do you not help out your family? Do you guys agree with that philosophy? All that coming up on Candace. So you guys already know that I absolutely loved Tucker Carlson Down Under, the way that he was just giving it to the journalists because all of their questions were so predictable. And when they got on the subject of Russia, 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 because how could they resist themselves, Tucker had the best response. Take a listen.
Putin! Putin!
I think you did strategically because you knew it's what we'd ask.
Putin! He's so bad!
And I also appreciate that.
Did he make you take the COVID shot?
Putin! That is exactly how a lot of us feel when they start hammering this Russia is bad narrative. We're just bored with it. And by the way, it's not just Putin. I am also so incredibly bored. I am exhausted. I am tired. I need a nap. When people start doing the Nazi and the, of course, literally Hitler comparisons. It's over. It's canceled. Please stop it. It really started drumming up in 2015 when Trump was running. Literally Hitler, literally MAGA. They're just like Nazis. It's always literally, right? It's never figuratively. They're like, no, literally Donald J. Trump is Hitler. And of course, I've gone through it. Any person really that has a platform has gone through this. But I will never forget this. Now that I'm on the other side of it and so many years have passed, the first time that I ever almost got canceled, it was because I was discussing Adolf Hitler in an academic sense. Actually, the subject wasn't even about Adolf Hitler. It was a question that was being asked of me. You remember this clip notoriously. They were asking about the word nationalism and why people are afraid of embracing the word nationalism. And I said that it was wrongly attributed to Adolf Hitler. And then BuzzFeed took me out of context. They made it seem as though I was saying Hitler was a good guy, which of course I wasn't. That's always a hoax when somebody is pretending that someone jumped up and said that. But it didn't matter. People were incensed. They were demanding my cancellation. I had Jewish groups demanding my cancellation and saying, how dare I? And I even got blacklisted temporarily from Fox News until Stuart Varney was the first one who had me on his show. And we talked about the scandal, and he gave me a piece of advice. He said, you should just never talk about Adolf Hitler. And at the time, I was so appreciative. I was like, thank you for allowing me to not have my entire platform canceled. But I reflect on that, and I'm like, what an absolute nonsense that is. And I'm not saying this about Stuart Varney, but just that general idea, and that is an idea that permeates, is that we are not allowed to discuss Adolf Hitler. Why? That is crazy, especially because he is the focus of all of our youth indoctrination, right? We have a visceral response when we hear his name. That's why I did the sound effect, dun, 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 because they've turned him almost into Lord Voldemort. I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan. I definitely was and am one. And this whole concept of a dark lord who should not be named. Adolf Hitler is he who should not be named. And what's really interesting is that when you even discuss, you would assume, since that's the entire focus, the nucleus of our idea of who a bad person is, step aside Satan because we've got Adolf Hitler. When you assume that people therefore must know a lot about World War II, you then find out that actually Americans know nothing about World War II. My husband was amazed by this, by the way, obviously, because I'm in this sort of cross-national relationship. My husband was like, why do Americans always use Adolf Hitler as if, he was the number one mass murderer of the 20th century? He wasn't. What is this extreme focus on Nazis and Adolf Hitler as the only comparison we can ever make? And like I said, it's because we have been indoctrinated and we actually know nothing about the person other than the fact that we must fear him. And if you really, really, really want to insult someone, say, you are literally Hitler. Literally. And so, yeah, imagine my surprise. I know I've showed you this on the show before, but when I actually then started learning real history and I got out of the bubble of the American education system and I started recognizing these Soviet tactics of introducing really heavy concepts to kids while their brains are developing because you want to traumatize them. And you're traumatizing them because you want them to comply. And what you want them to comply with in this case is Germany, Nazi, Hitler, the greatest evil that's ever happened on earth, even though factually and statistically, it is not. And part of that learning process for me when I started looking into it was coming across a huge fact that we ethnically, the Allies, ethnically cleansed 12 million Germans. Because when you say to people, okay, what is it about Hitler? Why is he the most evil? Well, the first thing people would say is, well, an ethnic cleansing almost took place. And now I offer back, you mean like we actually did to the Germans? Here's a clip again from that documentary I keep telling you that you have to watch. It premiered on BBC and it is entitled The Savage Peace. I'm going to give you a clip here of a Czechoslovakian civilian who watched what was done to his German-speaking neighbors immediately following the end of the war. Take a listen.
Altogether, 2,000 Sudeten Germans were murdered in just 5 days in June.
Also ich habe schon als Genozid angesehen.
Well, I certainly saw it as genocide.
Inneren Schweinehund.
They just let out their inner bastard on these defenseless people.
So war es deutlich.
That was clear.
It took decades to get this small memorial to the killings erected in the teeth of local Czech opposition.
I can say that what happened here in 45 is no different at all to the Third Reich. The morals of these people who did this, they were the same.
They were the same. You're probably thinking, but Candace, literally Hitler. He had the camps. That's what made it different. It was the camps. Imagine camps being used to kill people. Oh, you mean the exact same camps that we then transferred the Germans into so that we could, mass kill them? Yeah, I bet you've never heard the name Solomon Morel before, and you should know about him because Solomon Morel is an interesting character. He had some Soviet training, and then one day he just stood up on top of a table and said to these innocent German-speaking civilians, I'm going to torture you because I don't know where my parents are, and they were put into camps. And then he began to torture these individuals who were completely guilty of nothing. They were innocent. Here's another clip from that documentary. Take a listen.
The pyramid method was when 4 were thrown next to each other, and 4 then diagonally on top of them, and then another 4, until they were quite high. And then not always, but every so often the militia climbed on top, and they danced on the prisoners. No one came away from this unharmed, and people died.
I wanted to force my mother to commit suicide. Men took their lives by hanging and women by walking into the electric fence.
All under the direction of Solomon Morel. He was a particularly sadistic individual. Now you might be thinking, sure, something must have happened to him. He must have faced some consequences. And you'd be right. He did. In 1996, and this is according to his Wikipedia page, Solomon Morel was formally indicted of genocide by the Polish Public Prosecutor's Office. The indictment was later amended to include war crimes, crimes against humanity, and communist crimes because he was a commie. The latter charge was added in 2004 and constitutes a specific crime under Polish criminal law. So in 1998, Poland requested that he be extradited for the trial, but Israel refused. Yeah, that's where he was hiding out in Israel. And so Israel sent a reply to the Polish Justice Ministry from the Israeli government that said that they would not extradite him because the statute of limitations had expired on war crimes. So you can put, Germans into a pyramid, innocent civilians. You can watch them suffer. You can murder them in mass. And I guess statute of limitations can expire. That's all I'm going to say on that because Israel is, of course, our greatest ally, the most moral everything in the world. Do you know who else agreed with those Czechoslovakian civilians that the things that were done to the Germans were utterly horrific? General George Patton Jr., you're probably familiar with his name because he was a very decorated U.S. general in World War II who led the Third Army, both in France and in Germany. Well, post-war, they appointed him as the military governor in Bavaria, and he led denazification efforts, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to denazify the territory. That's a great effort. But then they say that as he was leading this, he became, quote unquote, increasingly erratic. PBS states that in April of 1945, he was removed by Eisenhower from his leadership of the Third Army for making inflammatory remarks concerning the denazification policies. What were those policies? He said, quote, "We may have been fighting the wrong enemy all along, but while we're here, we should go after the bastards now because we're going to have to fight them eventually." He's referring to the Soviets that trained that person that I just showed you, who were utterly sadistic and mass murdering Germans for no reason other than the fact that they were speaking German. They hadn't even voted for Adolf Hitler, had nothing to do with anything, but they had to die. So yeah, if that's what your concern is, if you're worried about camps, we did that. If you're worried about ethnic cleansing, we did that. Don't even get me started on the camps that we forced our own American citizens into following Pearl Harbor. Yep, that's a thing as well. Of course, you remember that. Japanese, some people weren't even Japanese. They were just Japanese looking. And we went ahead and we put them in camps after Pearl Harbor, and we made them stay there until the end of war. So don't let that be something that you think we're not capable of. But then you move on to the experimentation. Yes, of course, that's been embedded into our minds. The Nazis experimented on innocent people. Candace, come on, that's the difference. They experimented on twins. I mean, some of the stories, by the way, sound completely absurd. I'm like, the idea that they just like cut a human up and then sewed them back together. Why would you do that? Literally, even if you're the most evil person in the world, that's a tremendous waste of time and supplies. Just slice a person in half and sew them together. That just sounds like bizarre propaganda, but let's just go with it. Let's say that that's actually true, okay? That experimentation is the thing that sets the Nazis apart. Well, why did we bring them all over here thereafter? What was Operation Paperclip? We took all of those top Nazi scientists and we brought them to America. I wonder why we did that. Maybe for a little more experimentation. Have you heard of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb? Have you ever heard of the CIA? If you think experimentation is unique to the Nazis, you need to wake up. Oh, but Candace, the Nazis murdered people with special needs. You heard of Planned Parenthood? They literally tell you to abort your children if they have special needs. You learn that in the school system. And in terms of experimentation, I invite you again as required readings. This book, Chaos, man. They're talking about this specific operation that took place under the directive of LBJ, who was also a monster, a monstrous president that we had. And this operation was called Phoenix. And I'm just going to read you just a couple of sentences here. Their attempts were sometimes even more unhinged. In 1968, CIA scientists at the Bien Hoa prison outside Saigon surgically opened the skulls of 3 prisoners, implanted electrodes on their brains, gave them daggers, and left them alone in a room. They wanted to shock the prisoners into killing one another. But when the efforts failed, the prisoners were shot and their bodies were burned. Yeah, it's an operation where we just were mass killing civilians, which we do a lot. But there, of course, if we do it, it's different. It's different because we're not literally Hitler. We drop bombs on entire populations. We firebomb Christians. We drop a nuke on praying Catholics. And if you know about it, you get screamed at by the propagandists in the West. Knowing about it is the crime. The crime is not actually dropping a bomb on praying civilians in Nagasaki. That's not the crime. The crime is not firebombing people through Ash Wednesday in Dresden who were civilians, children. No, that's not the crime. The crime is you knowing. It's me knowing. That's the real problem. And I got to stop knowing these things. I got to stop knowing about Pol Pot. I got to stop knowing about the Cambodian genocide and knowing that, of course, there were people that did worse things throughout history. Especially as a Christian, I have got to stop talking about Henryk Yagoda. They get real upset when you talk about the Bolsheviks. You want to know why? Because the Bolsheviks were never brought to heel. The Bolsheviks never had to face trials. There were no Nuremberg trials for the Bolsheviks. In fact, many of them came to America, and many of them are in positions of power right now. And that's why they get real angry when you start looking into history, when you start recognizing that they are intentionally telling Christians to shut up about the Christians that have been killed all across the world. They get very uncomfortable when you know stuff that they did not put into your book when you were in middle school to traumatize you into compliance of believing that the only bad people ever, there's only two of them, by the way, Putin and Adolf Hitler. So to those people, I'm just going to say, spare me, because I'm not going to stop talking about real history. I'm going to educate people that follow me about real history, because it's the only way that we're going to prevent these psychopaths from doing more psychopathic things in the future. If you're looking for people that behave like literally Hitler, it ain't me, buddy. You got to start examining your own government. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. You know the reality that's surrounding us right now. A lot of us are struggling to keep up with everyday bills, food, gas, the power bill. If you own a home, I want you to call my friends at American Financing today. Interest rates have dropped into the fives, which is nearly a quarter of the average credit card rate. American Financing is saving their customers an average of $854 a month by tapping into their home's equity and wiping out high-interest credit card debt. $854 a month is like a $10,000 raise. Credit card interest rates are insane, and most of us are still carrying a balance from month to month. Call American Financing and take care of that today. And if you call today, you may not even have to make next month's mortgage payment. Call American Financing at 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210. Or you can visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. Okay, now it's time to get into some stories. You already know what I'm going to say. Look how close we are to 2 million subscribers. I am so excited. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also hit the notifications so that you hear more. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen. So I saw this headline in the Daily Beast. It says, Kyle Rittenhouse family, where his collateral damage. Apparently, there is a family feud. And the reason that the Daily Beast is covering this is because his mother and his sister have taken to GoFundMe to raise money for rent. Their GoFundMe bio, right now they have smashed their goal of $6,500, reads this: Dear friends, family, and generous strangers, I'm reaching out to you today with a heavy heart and a sense of urgency that I never thought I'd experience. Our family has been through unimaginable hardships, and now we find ourselves on the brink of losing everything. Just under 4 years ago, our lives were shattered when my brother was involved in a tragic shooting incident. The aftermath of this event uprooted our family's stability and left us grappling with grief, trauma, and the harsh reality of starting over. We know that we are not the only family struggling to rebuild after that fateful night. In the wake of this tragedy, my family, among many other families, has faced countless challenges. We've had difficulty obtaining and maintaining employment due to the fact that many people still believe my mother drove Kyle or was somehow involved in his decision to go to Kenosha. We've struggled emotionally, mentally, and financially to piece our lives back together. With my brother's unwillingness to provide support or contribute to our family, we've been left to navigate this journey on our own. Okay, so you get it. She then says that she lost her job, this is his sister, due to frequent hospitalizations due to some medical issues, and she has not been able to work over the last 4 months. And so people are dragging Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, people are divided on this issue, but I would say the majority of people are like, hey, Kyle, why aren't you helping your family? They stood by your side throughout this trial, and now you are making some money. Presumably he's making some money. I don't know that for a fact, but he's got a little bit of fame. Maybe he's getting paid for some speaking events. Who knows? And they feel that he should be helping his family out. I have a lot of feelings about this. First and foremost, I want to say that Kyle Rittenhouse is 21 years old, okay? So the idea that he is now financially responsible for his mother and his sister because he's 21 years old and he was rightfully found not guilty because he didn't commit the crime seems a little odd to me. I also don't like this because we already knew, looking into the Kyle Rittenhouse case, that they were already a family that was divided, that there were obviously some issues because we had learned that his mother and father were divorced. And so I think that because they are saying they have no money, people are assuming somehow like he's the father of the family, that he should be responsible for them. And we just don't know what is going on in this family. We have no idea what is going on in this family, that his mother does not have enough money to make rent, and blaming it on him, I don't know. That just seems to me to be a little bit suspicious. And it kind of gets into this bigger topic because I think that a lot of times people think that because people have fame, and this includes me, it can include Donald Trump, anytime a family member comes out of the woodwork and starts making allegations, you instantly go, okay, that person must be telling the truth. And that's not the circumstance. People come from really messed up families all the time. I don't know a single family, including my own, that does not have issues. I would be so annoyed if some random cousin from nowhere came out and was like, well, Candace is not taking care of us. Okay, what are the real issues here? Now, you put Kyle in an impossible circumstance because if he responds, who knows, maybe there's drugs, maybe there's alcoholism, maybe they were already not paying their rent before this case ever even happened. Who actually knows? He's going to look like the bad guy. But at the end of the day, who Kyle Rittenhouse is he's a person who rightfully was found not guilty. I am sure that trial impacted his family, but I do not feel so sure that it impacted his family so much that none of them can get a job, especially because she says at the very end of this statement that she lost her job because she had frequent hospitalizations. I lost my job due to frequent hospitalizations flies in the face of her previous statement where she says that in the wake of what happened in her family, she couldn't get employment. No, you did have employment and you lost employment due to something that had nothing to do with your brother. So again, we don't know what's actually happening in Kyle Rittenhouse's family. And I felt like I wanted to defend him because it just seems completely absurd. But a 21-year-old kid who by no stretch of my imagination is this kid wealthy should be responsible for taking care or blamed rather. Forget we're even responsible. It's nice to help out your family, but blamed when his mother can't make rent. We don't know what's going on in that family, and we should not be taking the Daily Beast spin on this because they simply don't like that the right likes him. And he survived a trial because he should have survived the trial. He was found not guilty because he, in fact, was not guilty of doing anything other than defending himself against deranged pedophiles, because that's who was pursuing him on foot. People who had crimes against children as convictions in their past, not Black Lives Matter supporters. They were just deranged individuals. All right, guys, I want to move on because I cannot believe this reporter or writer published this piece using his full name. Like, are you new here? Do you understand what Taylor Swift fans are capable of? They crazy. They will come for you, come for your children. They don't play around. These Swifties are deranged in the head. We talk a lot about this show about the idea of turning these people into gods, like Hollywood types into gods, and the way that people pursue them. No greater example of that than Taylor Swift. That is a full-blown psychosis, and the media understands it. They publish every second of her life, trying to turn her into this real-life Barbie. And the stories that you read of people waiting in line for tickets, it's very disturbing to me. I just see all of it as a mental disorder. Well, this writer rather, decided to say what I've been thinking for a very long time, what I've been saying for a very long time, and that Taylor Swift is just not a good role model. I don't care which way you slice it. If you are sitting outside of the media propaganda and the media trying to tell you that she's exactly who every woman should want to be, and you actually examine her life and the things that she says versus the things that she does, you do come across the fact that this is a woman who doesn't have the best behavior and also is a bit hypocritical at the best of times. He writes this: at 34, Swift remains unmarried and childless, a fact that some might argue is irrelevant to her status as a role model. But I suggest it's crucial to consider what kind of example this sets for young girls. A role model, by definition, is someone worthy of imitation. While Swift's musical talent and business acumen are certainly admirable, even laudable, we must ask if her personal life choices are ones we want our sisters and daughters to emulate. This might sound like pearl-clutching preaching, but it's a concern rooted in sound reasoning. So I will ask that question to the many moms that listen to me and take their daughters to Taylor Swift concerts. Would you want your daughters to emulate her behavior? Like, would you want them to float in and out of relationships all the time, constantly saying that the relationship is not your fault, it's the other person's fault, and at the age of 34, to be still dating just like that, unmarried and childless? Is that actually behavior that you want them to emulate? Just leaving that out there. I'm not saying that you have to answer it right now. Goes on to write, Swift's highly publicized romantic life has been a source of prime tabloid fodder for years. She has dated numerous high-profile men. This revolving door of relationships may reflect the normal dating experiences of many young women in today's world, but it also raises questions about stability, commitment, and even love itself. Should we encourage young girls to see the Swift standard as the norm, something to aspire to, Or should we be promoting something a little more, shall we say, wholesome? And that's going to sting because the media keeps trying to sell her as someone who is wholesome. And I don't perceive her as someone that is wholesome. I see her as someone that is very well marketed and who has a team of people that surround her to give her that veneer. But when you actually look into it, her behavior is extremely toxic. And just because you are packaging it as something that is non-toxic and something that is organic does not make it so. And it is a question that I think a lot of parents should ask themselves, because there is this weird religion cult-like obsession that people have with Taylor Swift, and it's just not healthy. And that's why people go, why do you cover her so much in your show? Because I'm one of the lone voices in media, me and this guy who's obviously going to get killed by a Swiftie, who are willing to say it, who have the courage to say she's not a good role model. Doesn't mean she's the worst role model out there. No, not even by a stretch of any imagination would I say she's the worst role model out here. We've got a lot of fish to fry. But she does have more fans than most of those bad role models, right? She has millions upon millions of people that follow her and hang on her every word and who do want to be like her, who dress like her, who want to act like her. And I don't think a 34-year-old woman cosplaying a 15-year-old is how you would want your daughter to behave. When she's 34, you want her to act like a 34-year-old and not still speaking in her baby voices. Lastly, this person points out that she vocally criticizes the patriarchy, and that adds a layer of complexity because she's constantly dating strong, influential men, celebrities who embody significant social and economic power, and that appears hypocritical. Of course it does, right? She writes about all of these guys and how they're all bad, and then she's dating someone like Travis Kelce, who has a reputation as a bad boy. She's dating someone like Matthew Healy, who has a reputation as a bad boy. And then when she gets out of these relationships, she pretends like she just, I didn't know that they had these reputations which preceded them, and now I'm going to write a song and reassert my childhood innocence, as I always do, even though I will be turning 35 in December. So I appreciated that piece because I think there just needs to be more of that. And I do think that parents need to be careful allowing their children to be as obsessed as I see they are with Taylor Swift. It's just getting weird. It really is weird. And by the way, not just little girls that are obsessed, grown women. It's my Instagram this year it was very creepy. It made me uncomfortable. A lot of divorcees and I don't know, just moms bopping in a way that I just thought, I don't know, like they were trying to express maybe something else. Here's a question for you. Are you overwhelmed with back taxes or struggling with unfiled returns? With 20,000 new hires, the IRS has stepped up enforcement since the end of COVID relief programs, issuing millions of pay-up notices in 2024. Tax season is over, and so for the IRS, that means that collections season has begun. Contact Tax Network USA for personalized support with your tax issues. Tax Network USA is the nation's premier tax release firm with a history of negotiating over $1 billion in tax relief for clients. They offer a range of services, including penalty forgiveness, hardship programs, where you might not even have to repay anything until your tax debt expires. And they even offer in-compromise solutions for lump sum settlements. So whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their team of experts is prepared to assist you. Even if you're behind on your taxes due to missing personal or business records, Tax Network USA can guide you through the process of catching up. Handling IRS matters without professional help is indeed risky. Protect your financial security by seeking guidance from Tax Network USA. Their experts provide strategic advice on reducing or eliminating your tax debt. To schedule a complimentary consultation, call 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Candace. That's tnusa.com/Candace. So the Biden administration is up to no good ever. Nothing they do is good. It's shocking to me that there are people that are living under a delusion that somehow this has been healing America since Trump is no longer in office. And the more you look into their policies, the creepier it gets. Genuinely creepy is the right adjective. What they're actually trying to do right now is they have this new policy that's scheduled to go into effect in 2026 that will block many Christian families from being considered as foster parents if they don't agree to affirm a sexually confused child's gender. That is just unbelievable. That's unbelievable. They're essentially trying to mandate gender dysphoria. And so if you adopt a little girl and that little girl or you are fostering a child, little girl, and that little girl starts attending a public school and she gets confused about her gender because that's what they're doing on purpose in these classrooms, in these Soviet classrooms, and she comes home and says, "Oh, I think I might be like a non-binary fish." And you say, "No, no, honey, you're a little girl." Well, your child is going back to the state. Think about how terrifying that is. And there's so much of this happening, by the way, in the system where they are either mandating that you have to give your child every vaccine because the state sees that child, first and foremost, they get to make money from that child, and also they get to control that child's past to further the state's incentives. And so it was very meaningful that Paris Hilton testified, speaking out about foster care, speaking out about the adoption process, speaking really about all of the children who are suffering because they are being raised and controlled by government incentives. Take a listen to her testimony before Congress.
Today, residential facilities are continuing to warehouse over 50,000 foster youth and unknown number of adopted youth in lockdown facilities. Innocent kids who have not committed crimes, kids whose parents didn't have resources to support them, kids whose parents passed away, kids who have already experienced trauma. This $23 billion a year industry sees this population as dollar signs and operates without meaningful oversight. It costs approximately $800 to $1,000 per day to place a foster youth in a facility, significantly more expensive than serving them in their own communities. What is more important, protecting business profits or protecting foster youth lives?
She is absolutely correct, and I think she uses the right word there when she says it's a warehouse, and that is what the state sees these kids as. An opportunity to make money. It is a warehouse. They get to keep them. They get to give them whatever they want. They can experiment on these kids. That is genuinely my view. It is such an evil industry, and it's one that we have to wake up to. It's another one of these topics that we all are quite guarded when it comes to, because we just don't like to think about children suffering. And so sometimes it feels easier to just ignore the crisis, but that's not the right solution whatsoever, which is why over the weekend we sat down with the makers of the film Sound of Hope for an incredible discussion. If you haven't watched it, please go back and watch it. And if you want to think of a small way that you can help, obviously support this film. It is coming out tomorrow. You can head to angel.com/Candace if you would like to purchase some tickets. And if, by the way, if you use my code Candace25, you will get 25% off those tickets. I want to remind you again that it is just the most incredible story about a real live place in East Texas called Possum Trot, where a small church a community decided that they were going to foster every child in the system within their radius. And it is unbelievable. They actually did it, and it was difficult. And it's just incredible that they just had the Spirit move them to do something like this, to confront this crisis and to give these children a real chance. So again, if you want to know how you can support, maybe you're not in the circumstance that you feel that you could foster a child, but you can at least support very much the people that do. Head to angel.com/Candace and you can learn about showtimes and you can buy some tickets. All right, guys, now it's time to get into some comments. So yesterday I was speaking about how I left the cult of science. Like, I just had to be humble enough to admit that I've been lied to about everything, and I actually have no idea what's going on. And I've realized that we have all been forced into this religion of like the experts, and they've turned themselves into gods, and I am just out. I am humble enough to recognize that I don't know anything to be true unless it is in the Bible. This user writes, "This is one of the best episodes so far. Candace, when I think you can't be any better, you just blow my mind even more. I don't know you, but I'm really proud of you. Stay strong and God bless you." Oh, and your transitions to the ads are getting smoother and smoother. Yes, I am getting smoother and smoother at ad transitions. We actually didn't do fun ad transitions today, but don't worry, they will be back. And yeah, I just feel that God blessed me with a platform, and I just want to use it to share truth. And I want to be honest with people. And I think people are responding to it because they are also waking up at the same time as me and realizing that so much of what we learned in school has been an intentional lie. And in many ways, we are being enslaved by those lies. We're harming ourselves. We're harming our children. It's all insane. And speaking of smooth ad transitions, one thing you want to do is make sure things are smooth in the event of an emergency, because there are a lot of emergencies that can happen, which is why I like Ready Pantry. So by now you're probably discerned that I have an apocalyptic mindset. I told you this, me and my husband were always like preparing for like if we just have to live off the land. That's why I learned to grow my own food. And it's also a reason why you should consider having an emergency supply of food and water. We all know we need to have 3 to 6 months of cash on hand. But what about food and water? Nobody thinks of this. I'm worried about you people that live in cities. If you don't, you need to know about Ready Pantry. Ready Pantry offers 25-year shelf-stable food and drinking water that will last for 50 years. These products taste amazing and include meals for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even come with a dessert. Not to mention the peace of mind you get knowing that you have an emergency supply of food and water ready for whatever comes. Power outages, hurricanes, weather, natural disasters, that's definitely becoming more and more common. What about a grid collapse like in Texas and Ohio? You could also have rolling blackouts like in California. War, supply chain, the list goes on and on and on. There are so many emergencies. Well, guess what? Ready Pantry is an American-based company. All the products are sourced from right here in America. They also use real ingredients packed with sufficient calories and nutrition for everyone in the family. These meals taste great and include meals, as I said, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even a snack and dessert. So stock your pantry now with buy now, pay later options available at checkout at readypantry.com/Candace. Ready Pantry offers discounts for 3 months, 6 months, and a 1-year supply, up to 20% off. Go to readypantry.com/Candace and use code Candace, and you'll save an additional 10% off your order. Plus, there's free shipping on all orders. Nicolo writes, "Hi, Candace. I'm a 15-year-old from Italy who wants to live in the U.S. in the future. I've realized just recently that I've been propagandized my whole life by my Marxist father and left-wing public school system. Right now, I'm a conservative Christian. Jesus is king. And I'd like to ask you, what research should I do to learn about the actual history like you did, if I don't remember wrong, when you were like 25? Thank you. Amen. P.S. Please like this so she sees this." I saw it and I'm going to answer your question. Honestly, the learning process for me has been very natural. I think you have to start with understanding you were lied to about one thing, like just one thing that just completely blows your mind. You're like, how could I get this wrong? And I think for me, it was vaccines. Like when I realized that they basically made me pledge myself to a medical system that has obviously been making us sick because of a lot of the lies they told us about vaccines. And I was blessed, as crazy as it sounds, by being vaccine injured by the Gardasil vaccine. And that led to me just not trusting authorities. In terms of history, it was kind of the same thing. It would be little tidbits that popped up, like, for example, World War II, something that completely blew my mind, and maybe you guys knew this, but we definitely did not learn this in school, that the Zionists signed an agreement with Hitler, like with the Nazi party, called the Havara Agreement. Learning about that exploded my mind. Like, I just thought, why would we not know this? And in that agreement, the German Jews were transferred to Palestine, and it was an agreement where they agreed to sell their stuff, give up their personal effects, and then the money would be transferred via like the Bank of Palestine. And so I would just learn little tidbits here and there, learning about Henrique Goda, learning about the Christian Holocaust, and I would go pursue actual books as opposed to the textbooks. So the textbooks are propaganda. The textbooks are meant to make you see things one way, pursuing actual books. And for me, I started with Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I was very interested in learning about the Bolsheviks and the Soviets because I think they are the most hideous people in the entire world. They brought every ill that we're fighting in society today. I actually think we're fighting communism in America today, and we're fighting socialists in America today because of the fact that we never really defeated the Soviets. Instead, we locked arms with them. I'm answering this question in a lot of different ways, but it was a very natural progression. It wasn't like somebody gave me a set list, but I hope to give people that information slowly, which is why I recommended as a first stop that book, Chaos. That book could make you read 30,000 different books because you're just so shocked at the audacity of evil of our government. Next person writes, "I'm a 25-year-old woman who, once getting into university, was bombarded with the messaging that self-love is happiness, and I tried to fit in. It only made me hate myself more, and I tried to repress the desire to be a wife, be a mother, and be in a nurturing position. I was dying to give. My peers never understood and ridiculed me for not being into one-night stands and embracing the feminist movement. When did feminism become a front for narcissism? I'm now a Christian, found a church I can help out at, and a Christian man who shares my values of selflessness. Feminism also tried to convince me the Bible was evil, and as someone who never read it, I was inclined to agree because 99% of university peers were saying so. has to be true, right? Let me say there's not one word in the Bible that is not the truth. I thank God for not giving up on me and revealing himself to me. Christ is king. Indeed, he is. And yes, once you look into the history of feminism, that's another thing. It's quite stunning to see that literally you had people, these communists that came to America and started feminism. They brought feminism with them. And it's shocking. It was a lot of immigrants. And I would say they came over between like 1880 to 1900, in that 20-year period, we got a lot of commies that came over and were suddenly all about birth control and the feminist movement, and they were mentors to Margaret Sanger. And like I said, the more you learn, the more you know. Isabella writes, "Hi, Candace. I'm a 14, almost 15-year-old teenage girl. I just wanted to thank you for what you do. My parents are atheists, and I finished my 2-year conversion this past Easter Vigil. I was baptized, had First Communion, and was confirmed. My parents are supportive of me, but are still liberal atheists. Thank you for shining light on all of these issues. I've had doctors tell me I should go on birth control for my acne. I said no, and my mom wasn't too happy. I've seen what birth control does, and I am not letting that happen to me. My mom wanted me to go on birth control. I think it was to almost get back at me that it goes against my beliefs. She's still not happy that I refuse to take birth control, but it's whatever. Anyway, God bless and keep you. And please pray for my parents. Viva Cristo Rey." I love this. I just love all of these comments so much. And yes, you only have one body. And I feel sad for your parents because they probably don't know the dark and disturbing history of birth control. And I will be bringing that to the public. I had shot all of these episodes on birth control when I was at the Daily Wire, and we never got to premiere them, but I'm going to reshoot them because it's very sinister. It is steeped in eugenicism. It is steeped in a desire to make women infertile. The real history of birth control. And I'm talking about every single one of them, no matter which birth control you use, whether it is the pill, whether it is the IUD, the history is so dark. It's terrifying. I mean, experimenting on women that were in mental facilities and knowing that these women were getting cancer and still being like, okay, we're still going to bring the product to market. Breast cancer, who cares? We're going to bring the product to market. Experimenting on Africans. Let me just stop because it's going to make me rant about birth control, and that's not what we need to do today. In fact, what we need to do is we need to read one more comment. Last comment from Pink Med. "I hope I don't hurt or kill Candace. She's sharing so much truth and I'm scared something will happen. We should all pray." Thank you, Pink Med. Definitely pray. You know, I have accepted, I know people, like I said, if they want to kill you, they're going to kill you. I mean, they've killed so many people, sometimes in broad daylight, you know. JFK, you just got shot in broad daylight. So I don't think about it too much. And I just know that ultimately what we are here to do is to tell the truth. You stick with God. I know that this life isn't it. That's the beauty of being a Christian. I know that this life is not it. And it is far from it. And I guess as everyone has been saying, Christ is king. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow for a brand new episode.